Tonight, on 6 Minutes, we will be looking at the difference between the Black Death during the medieval period and in modern-day Madagascar. We will be studying the effects on politics, economy, culture, and society. The Black Death was one of the worst disasters in European and human history. The plague was believed to have been originated in China, but in a less serious form and spread to Europe through trade and travel. When the plague hit Europe, it rapidly spread and began taking its toll among the empires. In just 3 years, over 1/3 of Europe's population had died. A drastic 100 million deaths had occurred all over the continent.
Yeah.
Joining me now is Zane Kelly. So Zane, tell us about your personal experience with the Black Death.
I was a survivor of an outbreak of the Black Death in my home village of Ambavombe in Madagascar. My community suffered greatly, with over 1/3 of the population suffering from symptoms of the disease, most dying.
Oh, I see. So did it have an effect on the agricultural aspect?
Yes, many fields were left unattended, leaving crops to dry out and eventually die. This cost us greatly.
So did any of your family die or get sick during the outbreak?
Unfortunately, yes. My younger siblings both became sick, but they did not die.
Oh, how sad. So how was it that so many people who got sick survived?
We received help from various different services, as they brought us medical supplies such as antibiotics, which helped curing many of the sick and preventing the transmission of the virus.
Thank you for your time, Zane. We will now be talking to an infectious disease doctor who helped with the Black Death in Madagascar. Why were so many doctors required to travel to Madagascar?
Well, in Madagascar, there are very few doctors or medical staff to help treat people, at approximately 1.6 doctors per 10,000 people.
That's a pretty poor statistic.
Yes.
Why were you funded by a non-government or government organisation, and are you a volunteer or employee?
I was sent to Ambavombe and other villages by the African government to help prevent this serious plague. I willingly wanted to go help as a doctor.
Can you please tell me what the different types of Black Deaths were and what the effect on your community was?
There are 3 forms of plague that bring a variety of signs and symptoms to those infected. Septicemic plague is a form of blood poisoning, and pneumonic plague is a form of airborne plague that affects the lungs before the rest of the body. The classic sign of bubonic plague was the symptom black buboes on the lymph nodes, which oozed pus and bled. Most victims died within 4 to 7 days after infection.
Not good at all, is it? Okay, thank you for your time. We will now be talking to an expert historian, Professor Morgan from the University of Sydney, about the effects of the Black Death in medieval times. Professor Morgan, what can you tell us about the Black Death's effect on culture in medieval times?
The Black Death in the medieval times in Europe was a much more feared disease. There was a rise in religion due to people not knowing the cause of the infection. There was also the introduction to an art movement called the Danse Macabre, which was influenced by people's fear and anxieties.
What were the impacts on the society during the time of the Black Death in medieval times?
Consequences of the Black Death included a series of religious, social, and economic upheavals, which had profound effects on the course of European history. The Black Death was one of the most devastating pandemics in human history, peaking in Europe between 1347 and 1350, with 30% to 65% of the population killed. It reduced world population from an estimated 450 million to between 350 to 375 million.
So what did the society at the time believe the Black Death was caused from?
Most people thought that the plague was God punishing them for their sins, while it was actually spread by fleas biting rodents and then biting humans, transferring the sickness to humans. For example, there was a group named the Flagellant that beat and severely injured themselves in hopes of being forgiven for their sins.
What were the political effects on medieval European society?
The Black Death also caused complete anarchy for a period of time. Most political figures or government officials were either dead, infected, soon to be dead, or locked up in their homes with their families trying not to get infected. During that time, there was no stable government. One reason for the lack of rule was because the government didn't know what to do.
Thank you for your time, Professor Morgan.
No problem.
That's it for 6 minutes tonight.